You've been learning English for years. You know words, you know grammar. But when it's time to speak, you stop. Because your brain asks one confusing question. Should I say can, could, would, or should? And in that 1 second of confusion, your confidence disappears. But here's the truth no one tells you. You don't need to memorize rules. You don't need to overthink grammar. You just need one simple mental trick. A trick that fluent speakers use automatically, without thinking. And once you understand this, you'll never get confused again. So before we start, tell me in the comments. Where are you watching this from, and what time is it in your country right now? Now let's fix this problem forever. Let me tell you something that might completely change the way you see English forever. Your problem is not grammar. Yes, you heard that right. It's not that you don't know enough rules. It's not that you didn't study hard enough. It's not that you are bad at English. The real problem is this. You were taught English in a way that your brain was never designed to use. Think about it. When you sit alone, reading, or doing exercises, everything feels easy. You can choose the correct answer. You can fill in the blanks. You can even understand sentences perfectly. But the moment you try to speak, everything changes. Your mind slows down. Your thoughts become heavy. And suddenly, a very simple sentence becomes a big problem. You want to say something small like, "Can you help me?" But your brain interrupts you. Should I say can or could? Is would better? What if I sound wrong? What if people judge me? And in that moment, you don't just lose words. You lose confidence. And this happens again and again. Until you start believing something dangerous. Maybe I can't speak English. But that belief is not true. The truth is much simpler, and much more powerful. You are trying to speak English using rules, instead of using feelings. Because real English is not built on rules. It is built on intention. Every sentence you say carries a feeling. Confidence. Politeness. Uncertainty. Respect. And modal verbs are the tools that express those feelings. But no one explains it like this. Instead, you are told. Can equals ability. Could equals past. Would equals future condition. And your brain tries to memorize all of this like a machine. But language is not a machine. Language is human. Fast. Emotional. Natural. This is why you freeze when speaking. Because in real life, you don't have time to remember rules. You only have time to feel and speak. So here is the mindset shift that will unlock everything for you. Stop asking, what is the correct grammar? Start asking, what feeling do I want to express? Because the moment you switch from rules to feeling, everything becomes lighter. Everything becomes faster. Everything becomes natural. And suddenly, those confusing words, can, could, would, should, they stop being a problem. They start becoming choices. And that is the moment your English begins to transform. Not slowly, but instantly. Because now, you are not studying English anymore. You are using it the way your brain was always meant to. And this is where real fluency begins. Now that you understand why modal verbs confuse you. Now that you see the real problem is not grammar but how you were trained to think. It's time to replace the confusion with something simple, something powerful, something your brain can actually use in real conversation. Because understanding the problem is not enough. You need a system. A system so clear, so natural, that even when you are nervous, even when you are speaking fast, your brain does not freeze anymore. And here is that system. From this moment on, stop seeing modal verbs as separate words. Do not think of can, could, would, and should as different grammar rules. Instead, see them as levels. Yes, levels. Levels of strength. Levels of politeness. Levels of certainty. Because that is exactly how native speakers use them. Not as rules. Not as definitions. But as a feeling scale that adjusts automatically depending on the situation. Imagine this in your mind. A simple line. On one side, strong and direct. On the other side, soft and polite. And in between, small shifts that change the tone of your sentence. Now place these words on that line. Can sits on the strong side. Could moves slightly softer. Would becomes even softer and more respectful. And suddenly, something amazing happens. All the confusion disappears. Because now, you are not choosing between random words. You are simply moving along a scale. Let's feel this together. You say to someone, "Can you help me?" It is clear. It is direct. It works perfectly. But now imagine the same situation, with a small change. Could you help me? Nothing changed in meaning. But everything changed in feeling. It sounds more polite. More respectful. More comfortable. Now go one step further. Would you help me? Now it feels even softer. Almost like you are giving the other person space, instead of pressure. This is the secret. Not different meanings. Different feelings. And this is why native speakers sound smooth, natural, effortless. Because they are not thinking about grammar. They are adjusting their tone. And you can do the same. But here is the most important part. You must train your brain to stop asking the wrong question. Right now, your brain asks, which word is correct? And that question creates pressure. Because your brain starts searching for rules, for formulas, for perfect answers. But real conversation does not wait for perfect answers. So from today, replace the question with a new one. Ask yourself, how do I want to sound? Do I want to sound direct? Do I want to sound polite? Do I want to sound very respectful? And the moment you answer that, your brain will choose the word automatically. Without stress. Without delay. Without fear. This is how fluent speakers think. Fast. Simple. Natural. And here is something even deeper that most people never realize. This system does not only work for requests. It works for everything. Offers. Suggestions. Questions. Opinions. Every time you speak, you are choosing a level of strength or softness. For example, I can go. I could go. I would go. 3 sentences. Same idea. Different levels of certainty, different levels of tone. I can go sounds sure and immediate. I could go feels possible but not certain. I would go feels conditional, thoughtful, more advanced. And when you understand this, you stop memorizing. You start controlling your voice. You start shaping your sentences like a fluent speaker. And this is the turning point. Because fluency is not about speaking fast. Fluency is about speaking without hesitation. And hesitation comes from confusion. But now, there is no confusion. There is only a simple scale. Strong to soft. Direct to polite. And you move along it, naturally. At first, you may still think a little. That's normal. But very quickly, your brain adapts. Because this system is not artificial. It matches how your brain already understands communication, even in your own language. And once it clicks, you will feel it. Sentences will come faster. Choices will feel easier. And for the first time, you will speak without that heavy pause inside your mind. That is the moment your English begins to flow. Not because you learned more rules, but because you finally learned how to think. And from here, everything becomes easier. Everything becomes lighter. Everything becomes real. Now that you understand the level system, now that you can see modal verbs as a scale instead of confusing rules, we begin with the most important word of all. Can. This is where everything starts. This is the foundation. This is the first step into real speaking. And if you truly understand can, not just its meaning but its feeling, then half of your fluency problem is already solved. Because can is not just a word. It is a signal. It tells the listener something very clear about you. It tells them that you are confident. It tells them that you are direct. It tells them that you are not afraid to express what you want. When you say can, you are not hiding behind language. You are stepping forward. And this is why can is powerful. But this is also where many learners go wrong. They either overuse it or they fear using it. Some learners use can everywhere, in every situation, with every person. And their English starts to feel flat. Not wrong, but limited. Because they never move beyond that first level. Other learners do the opposite. They hesitate. They avoid speaking. They keep searching for the perfect word. And because of that, they never build momentum. So listen carefully. Before you try to sound advanced, before you try to sound like a native, you must become comfortable with being simple. You must become comfortable with can. Because fluency does not begin with complexity. It begins with clarity. When you say, I can do this, you are not just forming a sentence. You are training your brain to act without hesitation. When you say, can you help me? You are practicing real communication. Not perfect communication. Real communication. And this is the key difference that most people never understand. Perfect English does not make you fluent. Active English does. The more you use simple, direct sentences, the more your brain gets used to expressing ideas without fear. And once that habit is built, then you can refine it. Then you can make it softer. Then you can make it more natural. But if you skip this step, if you try to jump directly to advanced language, you will always feel stuck. Because your foundation is weak. So this is your first training. Start using can without overthinking. Use it when you speak to friends. Use it when you practice alone. Use it even when you are unsure. Because confidence is not something you wait for. It is something you build. Sentence by sentence. Moment by moment. Now let's go deeper. Can is not only about ability. Yes, you already know this meaning. I can swim. I can speak English. But in real life, can is much bigger than that. It is used for permission. Can I sit here? Can I ask you something? It is used for requests. Can you call me later? Can you explain this? It is used for possibilities. This can work. This can change everything. So instead of memorizing separate rules, see the pattern. In every case, you are expressing something direct. Something clear. Something without distance. That is the feeling of can. No hesitation. No softness. Just communication. And this is why can is your training ground. It is where you learn to speak without stopping. It is where you remove fear. It is where your brain starts trusting your voice. But here is something very important. Even though can is powerful, it is not always enough. Because real communication is not only about being understood. It is also about how you make others feel. And this is where the next level begins. Because imagine this. You are talking to your boss. Or a stranger. Or someone you respect. And you say, can you do this for me? It is correct. It is clear. But it feels a little strong. A little direct. A little heavy. And this is the moment where fluent speakers naturally shift. Not because they remember a rule, but because they feel the situation. They feel the need to soften their words. They feel the need to create comfort. And that is where could enters. So understand this clearly. Can is not wrong. It is just the first level. It is the base. The starting point. And your goal is not to avoid it, but to master it. To use it freely. To use it confidently. To use it without fear. Because once can becomes natural to you, moving to could and would becomes easy. Effortless. Automatic. But if can still feels heavy in your mouth, if you still hesitate before saying it, then nothing else will feel natural. So don't rush. Build your foundation. Speak simple. Speak direct. Speak now. Because the biggest mistake you can make is waiting to become perfect before you start. And the moment you stop waiting, the moment you start using what you already know, that is the moment your English begins to come alive. Not in theory, but in reality. Not in your mind, but in your voice. And this is where true progress begins. Now that you have built your foundation with can, now that you have started understanding how direct, confident communication feels, we step into a new level, a level where your English stops sounding basic and starts sounding human. This level is called could. And if you truly understand this word, not just as grammar, but as a feeling, then something very powerful will happen. Your English will stop sounding like a learner. And it will start sounding like someone who belongs inside the language. Because could is not just a softer version of can. It is a bridge. A bridge between basic English and natural English. A bridge between speaking and communicating. A bridge between correctness and connection. Let me explain this in a way that will stay in your mind forever. When you say can, you are standing in front of someone, speaking clearly, directly, without distance. But when you say could, you take one small step back. Not because you are unsure. Not because you are weak. But because you are aware. Aware of the other person. Aware of the situation. Aware of the tone. And this awareness, this subtle shift, is what makes your English feel smooth. Because real communication is not just about sending a message. It is about creating a feeling. And could creates comfort. Think about this carefully. You walk into a room. You need help. You say, "Can you help me?" It works. It is correct. But it carries weight. Now imagine you say, "Could you help me?" Nothing changed in meaning. But everything changed in experience. The listener feels more relaxed. The sentence feels lighter. The conversation opens more naturally. And this is what you must understand deeply. Fluency is not only about being understood. Fluency is about making people feel comfortable when you speak. Because when people feel comfortable, they respond better. They connect faster. They listen more openly. And suddenly, your English is not just correct. It is effective. Now here is where most learners make a critical mistake. They think could is only for past tense. They think can equals present. Could equals past. And because of this misunderstanding, they limit themselves. They avoid using could in real conversation. And they stay stuck at the level of can. But listen carefully. In real English, could is not just past. It is possibility. It is politeness. It is softness. It is emotional intelligence inside language. When you say, "I could do this," you are not only talking about ability. You are opening a possibility. You are leaving space. You are not forcing the idea. You are allowing it. And that small difference changes everything. Because people do not like to feel pressure. They do not like to feel commands. They respond better to openness. And could creates that openness. Now let's go deeper into your mindset. When you speak English right now, your brain is focused on survival. Am I correct? Am I wrong? Will I make a mistake? But when you start using could, your brain shifts. It starts thinking about tone. About connection. About how your words feel, not just how they sound. And this is the beginning of real fluency. Because now, you are not just speaking English. You are controlling English. You are shaping it. You are choosing how you appear in conversation. And this is exactly what native speakers do, without even realizing it. They don't say could because they memorized a rule. They say it because it feels right. Because it fits the moment. Because it creates the right atmosphere. And you can reach that level too. But only if you stop treating English like a subject. And start treating it like a living experience. Now imagine this situation. You are talking to someone new. Maybe a colleague. Maybe someone you respect. Maybe even someone you feel a little nervous around. And you say, "Can I ask you something?" It is okay. It works. But it feels slightly direct. Now you say, "Could I ask you something?" Immediately, the tone changes. It feels respectful. It feels thoughtful. It feels safe. And this is why could is so powerful. Because it protects the conversation. It removes pressure. It creates space for connection. And the more you use it, the more natural your English becomes. But here is something even deeper that you must understand. Could is not only about politeness. It is also about possibility. When you say, "This could work," you are not making a strong claim. You are opening a door. You are saying, "This is possible, let's explore it." And this makes you sound intelligent, flexible, open-minded. And these qualities, these subtle signals, are what make someone sound fluent. Not big vocabulary. Not complex grammar. But the ability to express ideas with the right level of strength. Now think about your own speaking. How many times have you stayed silent? Because you were not 100% sure? How many times did you stop yourself? Because you thought your sentence must be perfect? This is where could becomes your freedom. Because could allows you to speak without full certainty. It allows you to try. It allows you to express ideas even when you are not completely sure. And that is powerful. Because fluency is not about certainty. It is about flow. It is about movement. It is about continuing, even when things are not perfect. And could supports that movement. It gives you flexibility. It removes pressure. It lets your thoughts breathe. Now here is your training. From today, start noticing moments where you normally use can. And ask yourself, can I soften this? Can I make this more comfortable? Can I create a better feeling? And in those moments, replace can with could. Not everywhere. Not blindly. But consciously. Slowly. Naturally. And over time. This will become automatic. You will not need to think. You will not need to remember. Your brain will feel the situation and choose the word. And that is the moment your English begins to transform at a deeper level. Because now, you are no longer speaking like a learner. You are speaking like someone who understands the language from the inside. And once you reach this point, moving to the next level becomes effortless. Because beyond could, there is an even softer, even more advanced level. A level where your English becomes truly smooth, truly natural, truly fluent. And that level is would. Now we arrive at the level that most learners never truly reach. Not because it is difficult. Not because it is complex. But because it requires something deeper than grammar. It requires awareness. It requires control. It requires a shift in how you think when you speak. This level is would. And this is where your English stops sounding like practice. And starts sounding like real life. Because would is not just a word. It is a signal of maturity in your language. It shows that you are not reacting. You are choosing. You are not just speaking. You are shaping your message. You are controlling the experience of the listener. And that is what separates a learner from a fluent speaker. Now let's slow down and truly understand this. When you say can, you are direct. When you say could, you are polite. But when you say would, you are intentional. There is depth in your sentence. There is thought behind your words. There is space in your tone. And that space, that subtle pause and force, is what makes your English feel smooth, effortless, natural. Let me show you something powerful. Imagine 3 situations. You are offering someone coffee. You say, "Can you take some coffee?" It feels a little unnatural. A little forced. Now you say, "Could you take some coffee?" Better. Polite. But still slightly structured. Now you say, "Would you like some coffee?" And suddenly, everything changes. The sentence flows. The tone feels warm. The interaction feels human. This is the magic of would. It doesn't push. It invites. And that difference is everything. Because real communication is not about control. It is about connection. And would builds connection. Now here is where things become even more powerful. Would is not only used for politeness. It is used for imagination. For reflection. For situations that are not real but possible. When you say, I would go, you are not just describing an action. You are expressing a condition. A thought. A scenario inside your mind. And this is where your English becomes advanced. Because now, you are not just talking about what is happening. You are talking about what could happen. What might happen. What you wish could happen. And this opens a completely new dimension of speaking. Because conversation is not only about facts. It is about ideas. Opinions. Possibilities. And what allows you to move freely inside that space. Now think about this carefully. Why do native speakers sound so natural? It's not because they know more grammar. It's because they move easily between reality and imagination. They say things like, I would try that. I would say it depends. I would go if I had time. These are not memorized sentences. These are natural expressions of thought. And this is what you must develop. The ability to express not just what is, but what could be. Now let's go deeper into feeling. Because this is where most learners completely miss the point. When you use would, you remove pressure from your words. You are no longer demanding. You are no longer direct. You are creating space for the listener to respond. And that makes your communication powerful. Because people feel respected. They feel included. They feel comfortable. And when people feel comfortable, they engage more. They open up. They respond naturally. And suddenly, your English becomes a tool for connection. Not just communication. Now let's connect this to your speaking problem. Right now, you hesitate. You stop. You overthink. Because your brain is trying to be correct. But when you start using would, your brain relaxes. Because you are no longer making absolute statements. You are exploring ideas. You are speaking with flexibility. And that flexibility removes fear. Because you don't need to be perfect. You just need to express. And this is the turning point. Because fluency is not built on perfection. It is built on freedom. The freedom to speak. The freedom to try. The freedom to continue, even when you are unsure. And what it gives you that freedom. Now imagine a real-life situation. You are in a conversation. Someone asks your opinion. Instead of freezing. Instead of searching for the perfect sentence. You say, I would say it depends. Simple. Natural. Fluent. You didn't overthink. You didn't translate. You just responded. And that is what you are training for. Not perfect sentences. Natural reactions. Now let's go even deeper. Would is also the language of politeness at the highest level. In professional situations. In interviews. In formal conversations. Would becomes essential. Because it shows respect. It shows awareness. It shows that you understand the social space you are in. For example, I would like to ask a question. I would appreciate your help. Would you mind explaining this? These sentences do not just communicate meaning. They communicate attitude. And attitude is everything in language. Because people do not only listen to your words. They feel your tone. They sense your intention. And what allows you to control that intention. Now here is something very important. Do not try to force would everywhere. Because fluency is not about always sounding polite. It is about balance. There are moments for can. There are moments for could. And there are moments for would. Your goal is not to replace one with another. Your goal is to choose the right level at the right time. And this choice, this awareness, is what makes your English truly fluent. Now let's bring everything together. You started with confusion. You didn't know when to use which word. You hesitated. You overthought. But now, you see the system. You feel the levels. You understand the difference. Can is direct. Could is polite. Would is soft, natural, and advanced. And this understanding is not just knowledge. It is transformation. Because from this point forward, you will not speak the same way again. You will not think the same way again. You will not hesitate the same way again. Because now, you are not guessing. You are choosing. You are not memorizing. You are feeling. And this is what real fluency looks like. Not perfect grammar. Not complex vocabulary. But simple words. Used with the right feeling. At the right moment. Without fear. And once you reach this level, something amazing happens. English stops being something you learn. It becomes something you live. Now we arrive at a word that looks simple, sounds simple, feels simple, but carries a weight that most learners never truly understand. That word is should. And if you only see should as advice, then you are only seeing the surface. Because should is not just advice. It is direction. It is influence. It is responsibility. It is the moment your English stops being just communication and starts becoming guidance. Let me explain this in a way that will stay with you long after this lesson ends. When you say can, you express ability. When you say could, you create possibility. When you say would, you soften and shape reality. But when you say should, you step into authority. Not authority over people, but authority over ideas. You are no longer just sharing a thought. You are guiding a path. You are showing what is right, what is better, what is necessary. And this is why should must be used with awareness. Because every time you say should, you are influencing someone's decision. You are placing weight on your words. You are telling someone, this matters. Now think about your own speaking. How often do you avoid giving advice? Because you are unsure. Because you feel you are not good enough. Because you are afraid of being wrong. This is where should becomes powerful. Because should is not about being perfect. It is about being helpful. When you say, you should practice every day, you are not claiming to be the best. You are simply offering direction. You are helping. You are guiding. And that is what real communication is about. Not showing perfection, but creating value. Now let's go deeper into feeling. Because just like the other modal verbs, should is not just meaning. It is tone. It is energy. It is intention. When you say, you should try this, the way you say it matters. If your tone is heavy, it can feel like pressure. If your tone is soft, it feels like support. And this is where your awareness becomes important. Because fluency is not only about choosing the right word. It is about delivering it in the right way. Now let's explore something most learners never realize. Should has two sides. The external side. And the internal side. The external side is when you give advice to others. You should study more. You should focus on speaking. You should stop translating. This is the obvious use. But the internal side is where transformation happens. This is when you speak to yourself. I should try again. I should not give up. I should speak even if I make mistakes. And this is powerful. Because the way you speak to yourself shapes your actions, shapes your habits, shapes your identity. So when you start using should internally, you are not just learning English. You are training your mindset. You are building discipline. You are creating consistency. And this is where language becomes more than language. It becomes a tool for growth. Now let's connect this to your fluency journey. Right now, you might know many words. You might understand many sentences. But consistency is the real challenge. Showing up every day. Practicing even when you don't feel like it. Speaking even when it feels uncomfortable. And this is where should becomes your guide. Because every time you hesitate, you remind yourself, I should speak. I should try. I should not wait for perfection. And slowly, this becomes your habit. Not forced. Not artificial. But natural. And once this habit is built, your progress becomes unstoppable. Now let's go even deeper into communication. Because should is also used to express expectation. For example, this should work. He should be here by now. Everything should be fine. Here. You are not giving advice. You are expressing what you believe is likely or correct. And this adds another layer to your speaking. Because now, you are not only guiding actions. You are expressing judgment. You are interpreting situations. And this is what fluent speakers do all the time. They don't just describe reality. They evaluate it. They respond to it. They shape it. And should allows you to do that. Now imagine a conversation. Someone asks you, what do you think I should do? This is not just a question. It is trust. They are asking for your direction. Your opinion. Your guidance. And your response carries weight. So when you answer, you should focus on speaking daily. You are not just speaking English. You are influencing someone's path. And this is why mastering should is important. Because it teaches you responsibility in language. Now let's address something very important. Many learners avoid using should. Because they are afraid of sounding too strong. Too direct. Too controlling. But the truth is, it's not the word that creates that feeling. It's how you use it. If you say, you should do this right now, it feels strong. But if you say, I think you should try this, it feels supportive, gentle, helpful. So the secret is not to avoid should, but to balance it, to soften it when needed, to combine it with other expressions. And this is how your English becomes flexible, natural, human. Now let's bring everything together in your mind. You started this journey confused, not knowing which modal verb to use, feeling stuck, hesitating. But now, look at how far you've come. You understand can as confidence. You understand could as comfort. You understand would as control and softness. And now, you understand should as guidance, direction, responsibility. This is not just grammar anymore. This is awareness. This is mastery. Because now, you are not choosing words randomly. You are choosing them with purpose, with intention, with understanding. And this is what makes your English powerful. Now here is the final truth you must accept. Fluency is not built in one day. It is built through small decisions, repeated daily. And modal verbs are part of those decisions. Every sentence you speak is a choice. Direct or soft. Certain or possible. Guiding or neutral. And the more you become aware of these choices, the more natural your English becomes. Until one day, you don't think anymore. You don't hesitate anymore. You don't translate anymore. You just speak. Smoothly. Clearly. Confidently. And that is the moment you realize something important. You are no longer learning English. You are living it. Now stop for a second. Not to think. Not to analyze. But to feel how far you've come. At the beginning, you were confused. You didn't know which word to choose. Can or could. Would or should. Every sentence felt like a test. Every word felt like a risk. Every moment of speaking felt heavy. And that heaviness, that invisible pressure inside your mind, was not because English is difficult. It was because you were trying to control something that is not meant to be controlled with rules. You were trying to force language, instead of flowing with it. But now, something is different. Now you don't see modal verbs as separate pieces anymore. You don't see them as confusing grammar points. You see them as a system. A simple, human, natural system. A system of levels. A system of feeling. A system of choice. And this is the moment everything begins to change. Because when your understanding changes, your behavior follows. And when your behavior changes, your identity begins to shift. You are no longer the person who hesitates. You are no longer the person who freezes. You are no longer the person who waits for perfect grammar before speaking. You are becoming someone else. Someone who speaks. Someone who expresses. Someone who moves forward, even with imperfection. Now let's bring everything together, not as separate lessons, but as one complete experience. Imagine this. You are in a real conversation. Not a classroom. Not an exercise. A real moment. Someone looks at you and asks something simple. And for the first time, you don't panic. You don't search for rules. You don't translate in your head. Instead, you feel the situation. You feel the tone. You feel the intention. And your brain responds naturally. If the moment is simple, direct, relaxed, you use can. If the moment needs softness, comfort, politeness, you use could. If the moment requires control, smoothness, natural flow, you use would. If the moment asks for guidance, direction, clarity, you use should. And all of this happens. Not slowly. Not painfully. But instantly. Automatically. Effortlessly. And that is fluency. Not speed. Not perfection. But freedom. The freedom to speak without stopping. The freedom to express without fear. The freedom to continue, even when you are not perfect. Because here is the truth that changes everything. Fluent speakers are not perfect. They are just free. Free from overthinking. Free from hesitation. Free from the need to be right every second. And now, you are stepping into that same freedom. But this is where most people make their biggest mistake. They learn something new. They feel excited. And then they go back to old habits. They go back to overthinking. They go back to translating. They go back to silence. And slowly, everything they learned fades away. But you are not going to do that. Because now, you understand something deeper. You understand that fluency is not a moment. It is a process. It is something you build every single day. Through small actions. Through small choices. Through consistent effort. Now listen carefully, because this part matters the most. From today, every time you speak, do not aim to be perfect. Aim to be active. Do not aim to use the best word. Aim to use a word. Do not wait for confidence. Build it. Sentence by sentence. Moment by moment. Because confidence is not something you find. It is something you create. Now imagine your future. Not far away. Very close. A few weeks from now. A few conversations from now. A few moments of courage from now. You are speaking. Not perfectly. But naturally. You are responding. Not slowly. But freely. You are thinking. Not in your native language. But directly in English. And when someone speaks to you, you don't freeze anymore. You don't panic anymore. You don't search anymore. You just answer. Calm. Clear. Confident. And in that moment, you realize something powerful. English is no longer outside of you. It is inside you. It is part of you. It moves with you. It responds with you. It lives with you. And this transformation, did not come from memorizing hundreds of rules. It came from understanding one simple idea. Language is feeling. Language is choice. Language is flow. And once you align with that, everything becomes easier. Everything becomes lighter. Everything becomes real. Now let's go even deeper. Because this is not just about modal verbs. This is about how you think. Before, your mind was rigid. Focused on right and wrong. Correct and incorrect. Perfect and imperfect. But now, your mind is flexible. Open. Adaptive. You understand that communication is not about perfection. It is about connection. And this shift does not just change your English. It changes your confidence, your presence, your identity. Because when you can express yourself freely, you feel different. You carry yourself differently. You interact differently. You live differently. And this is why learning English is not just about language. It is about becoming a new version of yourself. A version that is not limited by fear. A version that is not controlled by hesitation. A version that speaks. Now here is your final mission. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Right now. Start using what you learned. Speak. Even if it feels uncomfortable. Even if it feels imperfect. Even if it feels slow. Because every time you speak, you are training your brain. You are strengthening your system. You are moving forward. And progress is always better than perfection. Now take a deep breath. And say something simple in English. Not perfectly, but confidently. Because that one sentence is the beginning of everything. And from here, there is no going back. Only forward. Only growth. Only fluency. So now you understand something most learners never do. Fluency was never about knowing more words. It was never about memorizing more rules. It was never about being perfect. It was always about one simple thing. Freedom. The freedom to speak without stopping. The freedom to choose your words without fear. The freedom to express your thoughts, even when they are not perfect. And now, you have that system. You have that awareness. You have that control. The only question is, will you use it? Because nothing changes until you start speaking. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. But now. Even if your voice shakes. Even if your sentence is not perfect. Even if you feel uncomfortable. Speak anyway. Because every time you speak, you are breaking the wall that has been holding you back for years. And slowly, that wall disappears. And in its place, confidence begins to grow. Naturally. Silently. Powerfully. So from today, stop waiting to become fluent. Start acting like someone who already is. Speak simply. Speak daily. Speak without fear. And fluency will follow you. Not as a dream, but as your reality. If this video changed the way you see English, make sure you subscribe to English Mindset Academy. Because here, we don't just teach English. We train your brain to think in English. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, which one used to confuse you the most? Can, could, would, or should? And what time is it in your country right now? I read every comment. And I'm here to help you.